bare-knuckle boxers, gangsters, drug dealers. I mean, you wouldn't want to stay around theirs, would you? Well, guess what? I got an invite. I'm moving in with some of the country's most dangerous men, so we can find out how they sleep at night. And judging by this mob, there's gonna be tears before bedtime.
I'm in London on the trail of one of the world's most notorious drug smugglers.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I've took my fair share of drugs, you know. So let's not beat around the bush, let's not start going all naive around fucking drugs. I understand the drug thing. Maybe my generation, especially, you're surrounded by drugs. You know, it's easier probably to go and get a gram of gear than it is to go and get a pint of lager now. You know, it's almost like rife. London especially, rife with drugs. That's the reality, you know? There's the thing about the government, they ain't got a fucking clue what goes on. You know, they just want to sweep it all under the carpet.
The illicit drug trade is worth billions of pounds a year. It is one of the main reasons that Brits get banged up abroad.
This is not fair. It's 22 years I have to stay here.
So I'm about to meet David Mcmillan, a man who spent 30 years masterminding multi-million-pound drug deals. I'm going to spend a few days with him so I can get inside the mind of a drug smuggler. He's putting me up so I can see how the other half lives. On my way to meet David in Soho, I'm harshly reminded that drugs are a dirty business that can affect anyone. My taxi driver tells me a story, how he was hijacked and held hostage by a gang of 6 drug dealers while they made their deliveries all over London.
What time of the day was this?
11 o'clock Saturday morning, and he went all through the afternoon.
Scared for his life, he was forced to drive them around while they conducted drug deals.
I drove him around for 5.5 hours until I managed to get a call through to the police. That was a scary experience.
Fuck me.
He eventually managed to raise the alarm and the police responded. The drug dealers were arrested and he got away.
Frightening thought was they was going to iron you out at the end of it.
Oh, definitely.
Get rid of you.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not going to just go, all right, cheers, mate, you've been lovely, here's a couple of £100, go and crack on. Don't say nothing, mate, but we've been picking up like keys of heroin all over London or whatever. So, frightening thought that is, mate. Good luck in the future. Just, you know, you can take some sort of solace in the fact that it will never happen to you again. You'll be one fucking unlucky it does. Do that.
Drug dealing is not a victimless crime. Those boys were just lowly street dealers. But it makes me think how ruthless this business can be. I'm off to meet Mr. Big, a man at the top of the heap who had a lifestyle to match.
I won't say it's a bad thing. I won't say, oh, children, now don't do this at home. No, my advice to a young man who is starting out in drugs, and you'll make yourself a fortune.
Cocaine, LSD, hash and heroin. He smuggled 15 tons of it, worth £140 million.
My motto in all of my smuggling business is always to offer the best product I can find, offer a good deal, and never double-cross anyone.
He worked alone, but in his time he mixed with notorious criminal networks from Colombian drug cartels to the Italian mafia.
To survive in David's business, you've got to be utterly relentless.
In a trade where life is cheap and death is a daily business, David was at the top of his game.
You have another gang that likes your little setup and wants to muscle in. The only way you get respect is by standing up to them or putting them out of the picture.
If somebody simply disappears, and that's the best way.
The man I'm going to meet is a master of deception and has spent his life lurking in the shadows. I've never met David, and I haven't got a clue what he looks like.
Thing for me is, what does a drug smuggler look like? Now, I think I've got a bit of nous about me. I think I'm on the ball. I think it's going to be obvious. Clearly, he's going to be standing there in a white suit, smothered in gold, pair of glasses on, looking a bit digi and sweaty. Let's go and do it. Dave? No. Nah, it's not him. If it is him, he's one lucky fucker, I'll tell you that now. Dave?
No, Gareth.
If he was a drug smuggler, you'd be a fucking good one. International drug smuggler.
There's only one other guy to ask. But it couldn't be him, could it?
Is your name Dave?
It is, as a matter of fact.
Pleasure to meet you, sunshine. I'm Danny.
Hi, Danny. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. You done me there. I was running around like a lunatic there trying to spot you out. But I would never, if I was customs, you would have fucking got away with it, son.
You think so?
You'd have slipped straight through the long grass. No two ways about it. Sweetheart, son.
We're in the middle of a...
David is far from what I was expecting. He looks innocuous. He seems too posh to be a drug dealer.
Why a drug smuggler?
Ah, that. Well, because it's a problem-solving thing, isn't it? So that's the fun of it. And the more difficult it is, kind of stupidly, I've never been able to resist it when somebody says, no, we've tried it from there, it can't be done.
That excites you. That excites you, the idea of taking something on that's never been done before. You fuck up, that's it. It's over, really, isn't it?
Well, it depends where you are. In most of Asia, I've been arrested in most Asian countries, I guess, and usually got out of it.
This guy is an eccentric. He sees smuggling more as an intellectual challenge rather than an illegal activity. I wonder if he broke the cardinal rule of drug dealers.
Are you the sort of cat that's going to have to try his product before, or what? I mean,
Well, the call of duty is strong, and I must admit that there wouldn't be a drug in creation I haven't tried.
Really?
Mostly just casual recreation. I've always taken the view that it's better to know how to take it and to take it safely than not at all.
David uses weird logic. He treats drugs like any other commodity. He doesn't seem to have any guilt for what he's done.
Can't quite work this geezer out. I mean, it sounds like a bit of a game to him at the moment. It's all like a jolly up and it's a bit of a joke. He's got one of them sort of very strange ways about him that, you know, I'm not used to on these sort of shows. But I've clearly only just scratched the surface.
Coming up, I hear how drug smuggling can lead to some harsh punishment.
It's a machine gun welded to a bench. You're about 6 feet away.
And all alone on a sailing trip with David, I begin to worry for my safety.
Well, there have been times when people have disappeared.
I'm with David Mcmillan, a major player in the drug smuggling business. He looks nothing like I expected. Certainly not a criminal mastermind.
Is your name Dave?
It is, as a matter of fact.
But this unassuming man is more slippery than I imagined.
I've been arrested in most Asian countries, I guess, and usually got out of it.
Hard drugs, cops and prisons are a million miles away from the society he grew up in. David Mcmillan was born in London in 1956. His dad was the head of a TV company and his mother worked in radio. His parents split up when he was 2 years old. He moved to Australia with his mother and soon had a string of new stepfathers.
The only influence out of all of that would have been that I had no great respect for men in authority. And because of that, no particular fear of policemen.
We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a party.
Everyone thought David might follow in his parents' footsteps when he got into amateur filmmaking. One of his early films was about a cunning escape. an idea that in his later years would come in very useful. With his disregard for authority, David's career plans were very different to those of his parents. His first job was in the film business, but as a projectionist in a cinema that showed porn films.
In fact, it showed kids' movies during the day and kind of soft porn at night. So you can imagine there was this difficult changeover about 5 o'clock,
Right.
when you had to herd all the kids out one way, and what they used to call the raincoat brigade would come in the other. Pretty easy job, just hose down the seats between sessions, keep the lights low.
It was the 70s, but David wasn't just another dope-smoking hippie with a dead-end job. He wanted to aim higher.
David started off as a teenager, I believe. I think he liked using those particular drugs, and so, you know, wasn't happy with the current quantity or supply or quality of, and so he thought, well, sod it, I can do better than that, went out and did it.
In the 70s, it was popular for hippies to go to India to get high, so that's where David headed. But he was there for business, not pleasure. On his way back home, David hid hashish in his radio. He was stopped by customs officials.
Well, to cut a long story short, he let me through. He saw it, nobody was much around, and he didn't really want to arrest this, 19-year-old imbecile. He said, "Are you going back there?" No, I shook my head. "Last trip, is it?" All right, take your radio and go. So I don't think I really saw this realistically at the time. I thought I was a clever chap and I got away with it.
This was a turning point that set David off on a 30-year career in drug smuggling. If he could get away with this, then why not bigger shipments?
I found that smuggling hash was very bulky, so then I moved on to A-class drugs.
As we walk the streets of Soho, David tells me how in India and every other country he's done business in, he starts making contacts in the seedier parts of town. People who can then introduce him to the bigger players.
This is a place for me that I would associate prostitution, complete sleaze. You know, I've staggered about here, drunk at me nut. The end of the night, not looking for prostitution or anything like that.
If I'm in the city and I don't know anybody, now what am I doing there? I'm going to score. You pick your man a bit well here.
Yeah.
Not too much of a flash Johnny, because he'll only be linked up with kind of local Mr. Biggs. I kind of mid-level, and hopefully a junkie. Behind a quiet junkie is a reasonable dealer, and behind a reasonable dealer there's a trustable wholesaler.
Ah, okay.
So
Just working down from the ground level and just sort of working your way up.
these kind of places are just a good place to start.
I'm not sure how to take this guy. He looks like he may blow over in a strong breeze, but he definitely talks the talk. David is like one of those old-school gentleman villains, a smooth operator with a silver tongue. He created a multi-million-dollar drug smuggling network. At its height, it stretched from Australia through Asia to South America and Europe. He was the owner of 30 passports. It was easy for him to disappear.
I've been in Karachi doing business, Lahore, most of Pakistan, parts of Kabul, across the border in Afghanistan, Thailand, Bangkok, Vientiane, Hong Kong, which is small and dangerous, most of the cities in Europe, even Japan. I've been wary of the United States. I find it very hard to read people there. They all seem like actors anyway. You get to meet people from every different group in the smuggling world there is. Danish, Swedes, some of the Colombian biggies, the Thai warlords, some of the mafia groups. Well-dressed young guys.
He was a trailblazer. That started off and thinking, well, you know, how do I go about it? And went off and looked at all the systems and found the loopholes. It's one thing to do a one-off, but to set up a chain that is totally underground and totally successful week in, week out for X years is quite a feat. That entitled him to become, well, I suppose, one of the leading smugglers of our age, really.
But this life wasn't all glamour.
I find myself across the border in Afghanistan and there's going to be trouble. Well, shooting your way out of it's just necessary.
And things don't always go your way.
Even when you think you're on top of your game, things can go disastrously wrong.
David has spent a total of 19 years in some of the toughest jails in 5 different countries.
David Mcmillan was a successful drug smuggler in many ways, in so much as he made a lot of money and he moved a lot of drugs. But the other way of looking at it is that he spent a lot of time inside in various prisons across the world. But for serious villains such as him, that's the price to be paid.
David's taken me for a taste of his old life in one of Soho's Thai restaurants, where his unassuming manner catches me off guard with a very surprising story.
Thailand for me has happy memories, but also it's got kind of bad memories. I had a major arrest there and found myself in a Thai prison.
In 1993, he was locked up in Thailand's infamous Klong Prem Central Prison, aka the Bangkok Hilton, a stay that could have been the end of him. I've heard stories about this place, but I didn't think I'd ever meet anyone who'd actually spent time there.
Is that like a reality just smacking you around the face and going, right, okay, this is real, this is really happening. This is probably one of the worst prisons in the world.
I've seen many a hard man from this side of the world crumble in those kind of places. All the new people coming in are made to squat naked. Pretty thorough searches. I remember a kind of fat, cross-eyed and ugly guard with one woolen mitt on with 2 brown fingers. There's a bit more colour added to those 2 digits. And why the hell did he use a woolen glove for crying out loud?
Yeah, fuck me. Some spare ribs, they're not very appetising after that. Okay.
No. I had high hopes that the Bangkok prison would have some kind of oasis of corruption where all the wealthy traffickers would live like kings. But it wasn't the case, certainly in the drug prison, which they call, it translates roughly as the cure. And it, well, cured any illusions anyway.
The Bangkok Hilton is one of the worst prisons in the world. The prisoners spend 15 hours a day in their cells and are forced to share with 20 others in a space meant for 5. But David's stay here was about to be cut short, literally.
The lawyer said, no, you're for the drop. I was going to be convicted for sure there. Now, 200 grams, it's still death penalty.
Death penalty, death by firing squad, is it? Or is it death by...
firing.
It's quite a medieval way of going about it, isn't it?
It's a machine gun welded to a bench. You're about 6 feet away, so not likely to miss. And there's a big sheet put in front of you, spare everybody the embarrassment. Now, bear in mind at this stage, you've had 30 lashes with barbed wire and your last meal. In that order, you know, what would you be ordering?
Yeah, Dave, is that not a deterrent for you? I mean, well, clearly it wasn't, but I mean, that is horrific.
Well, is it a deterrent?
What?
Fog? No, well, business. People are gamblers in the smuggling game.
Well, I mean, just the thing is, the gamble is that you lose and you get murdered horrifically.
I can't imagine being in that situation. And David talks about it so calmly, it's weird. But in his mind, there was only one thing to do.
I had no choice. I had to escape. And only after I'd abandoned all the phony bribery attempts and also half-baked plans that other people had offered, I ended up having to do it in the most basic way possible. Of course, being a smuggler was an advantage in my situation. For I had to smuggle in half the equipment I needed.
First, he cut his way out of his cell with a hacksaw blade. He then constructed a ladder made out of picture frames, a couple of bamboo poles, and some duct tape.
It was probably the most complicated thing I've ever had to do in one night.
It's ironic that as a child, David had made a film about escaping from prison. 25 years later, he'd be doing it for real. Only this time, the guards had real guns and real bullets.
I was in one building surrounded by 7 other walls and surrounded by a moat of some 30 metres and topped by a wall of over 20 metres with electric wiring around it.
He doesn't look much like Steve McQueen, but he is the only Westerner ever to break out of the Bangkok Hilton.
I just heard a native Thai speaker and it was a slightly chilly experience.
Even now, 13 years on, he's still wanted by the Thai authorities. Fortunately, Britain has no extradition treaties to countries with the death penalty. Luckily for David, this is the closest he'll ever get to Thailand. David's job and his attitude to the law has meant that he's lived most of his life as a fugitive, and over the years, he's perfected disappearing into thin air.
I get it. I mean, his job is about, you know, being another face in the crowd, being a face that you wouldn't even acknowledge twice. So, in that respect, I think he's perfect. Definitely just a shadow, this guy. He could slip around and you wouldn't have a clue he's around you.
After talking to the camera, I go back to find David, only to discover that he's given me the slip.
All right, fuck me.
It makes me wonder, is David still working in this business? Or is he just messing with my head? Coming up, David tries to convince me how easy it is to be a smuggler.
On a boat this size, you can make quite a good dishonest living.
And I discover the risks you take if you choose to become a drug mule.
Look, just think it's the worst thing you can imagine. Plutonium, you know, powdered babies or something like that.
I've been spending time with international drug smuggler David Mcmillan. I saw him in London and he told me how drug smugglers are treated at the Bangkok Hilton.
Now bear in mind at this stage, you've had 30 lashes with barbed wire and your last meal, in that order.
I've had a call from David, so I'm off to Brighton. He wants to show me something about his old smuggling days. He's a keen sailor, and over the years, he's smuggled tons of drugs around the world by yacht. He's taken me on a trip. He wants me to get a feeling for what it was like smuggling drugs on the high seas. I'm not really sure about this one. On a yacht, there's nowhere to run, and definitely no backup. And I don't know how real David is going to make this experience for me.
I'm a bit paranoid, I can't lie to you. Young Dave.
Well.
How are we, sir? Easy Tiger.
How you doing?
Lovely to see you.
Aboard.
Beautiful.
David's an intelligent man. He has an easy charm about him. But after his disappearing act in London, I'm finding it difficult to bond with the guy. But there's no time for sitting around. I'm put to work.
What do you want me to do? Ping it over there?
That way we can hang somebody from the yard arm.
Yeah, true.
Well done.
You good at knots and all that, Dave? Is that your game? You the old knot game? Oh, he knows his game. Look at him, look.
You know, I've tied a few things up in my time.
I hope I'm not next.
Nothing trapped.
Beautiful, isn't it, eh? Isn't it lovely?
That is good.
Wow, this is a bit of a moment, actually. Got to say, you know, it's just a bit of glamour, a bit of glitter. Here we go, out on the high seas. Look at it. God, fucking hell.
Suddenly, I realise this isn't going to be as much fun as I thought. It's getting choppy out here. We're miles from land and I'm completely on my own with a drug smuggler.
I somehow ended up doing this.
No, you know your game. I'm in your world now. I'm living in your world. Living dangerously. Living the fuck dangerously. Fucking hell.
There are over 2 million pleasure boats in the British Isles, and that doesn't include the boats coming in every day from across the Atlantic and the English Channel. Even I can see that those odds are pretty good for getting drugs past customs.
For me, you know, the idea that you've got, you know, there'll be drugs stashed, so you're battling, you know, to you know, cat and mouse with the police, but you're also battling against the elements. I don't know what's worse.
Well, I think...
What would worry you more?
I think a bribable Venezuelan Coast Guard would be a much better thing than Force 10 Hurricane. Because they just won't take your money, those hurricanes, will they? It's just peeing in the wind.
David's moved drugs on boats like this, and it was some of the best smuggling that he did.
Almost 90% of my smuggling was by air. That 10 to 15% by boat was the most valuable.
Really?
That came into tonnage, and it came into a lot of millions. On a boat this size, providing you've got the time and you're not too greedy, you can make quite a good dishonest living by traveling the world. Inside a gas canister, I once managed to hide about 16 kilos by putting a tank within the tank.
16 kilos of what? What was it, coke or was it hash?
That was a bit of Charles, yeah.
Bit of Charles, yeah?
Yeah. And you know what that's worth now.
Well, yeah.
Last week the prices were £54,000 a kilo. So I'm told. Yeah.
David claims to be retired from this game, but he's still keeping his eye in. Smuggling by a boat was very profitable for David, but his preferred method was by plane, with the use of drug mules, or couriers as he likes to call them.
What's the most you can smuggle in the air? I mean, what's the most, like, really pushing your luck?
But with couriers?
Yeah.
No, there's some pretty brave or stupid ones that take up to 11 kilos. It's a suicide mission.
See, 11 kilos, I mean, that's, for me, that's a lot of drugs, man.
I know, eh?
Jesus.
No.
Fuck me.
But David never did any of his own dirty work. When things go wrong in this game, it's the mules, not people like him, that end up in deep trouble. 90% of drug mules are first-time offenders who have been forced or conned into it because they need the cash.
How did an ordinary South London girl end up languishing in jail several thousand miles away, accused of being a drugs mule?
Those that are caught can either end up serving life sentences in appalling conditions,
22 years I have to stay here. I'm so sorry to my family.
and sometimes face a death sentence. David's brought me down into the galley to get some food on the go. And I can't help thinking about the risks involved in this business.
Gives me the horrors, that it really does. I can't stress to you enough. I mean, it's horrible, man. I've had some nightmares about that, being banged up in somewhere like that, and just surrounded by cutthroats, and just, you don't speak the language. You know, frightening, man. It's frightening stuff.
While David cooks dinner, I'm wondering how he can justify his main method of smuggling.
I certainly don't treat anybody who's worked for me as some pack animal that can be loaded up and sent.
Do you really class them as friends, though, Dave? I mean,
I certainly treat them as friends anyway.
You treat them as friends, yeah. This is the thing now. Now, is it like sort of rules in the fact that you don't actually tell them what they're carrying? You lie to them?
A courier doesn't ask what's inside the bag, and it's better in a way if they don't know. I've often said, look, just think it's the worst thing you can imagine. Plutonium, you know, powdered babies or something like that.
David doesn't see his couriers as victims, more as willing participants. Something I'm not sure I completely believe.
I don't think it's all about money with the best of the couriers. It's all about their own personal fantasy, because near on every one of them is a gambler at heart.
Really?
They want the excitement without any direct connection with the violence or, you know, the ugly side of the business.
I think I know what David's getting at, but I want to know how ugly things got for him.
I've always thought that in smuggling, in drugs, there's a dangerous side that most people think is really strong and always there. That is violence, killings, that sort of thing. If somebody is at your door, becoming violent, threatening your family, well, you cannot let it go on. Well, there have been times when people have disappeared. Now, there's a rule about murder. You never confess to one, and I'm certainly not a rule breaker when it comes to that.
Suddenly, this boat anchored off the coast of Brighton is feeling very small indeed. I've just realised how dangerous this guy was. But how did a man from his background reach that level of ruthlessness? Although immersed in this violent world of drug smuggling, he was living the high life with his wife Clelia, all of which he captured on film. In the late 70s, David had become one of the most successful independent drug smugglers in the world and had everything he could possibly want. But in 1979, he suffered a big blow. He was arrested in Australia when he was connected to a conspiracy to import heroin in a racket worth $96 million. He was 23 years old. 116 witnesses were called in the 6-month trial. David had used every trick in the book to get away with it, but was under a huge amount of pressure to confess, and the police went to extraordinary measures to break him. While he was in custody, the police moved into his house, and eventually, all that he had was either taken from him or destroyed.
Police lived in my house for 3 weeks. They held parties there, shit in the swimming pool. They painted over the oil paintings. They burnt the wooden carvings made of hewn pine that I'd collected over the years.
How did that make you feel? Did that make you feel angry? I mean, was it a bit of anger?
Naturally. My wife was arrested, and she was in there for 3 weeks, and she died in that prison.
Really?
She was burnt to death in a fire in the women's prison.
Oh, sorry.
It really made me feel incredibly guilty. If I've never felt guilty about anything, I felt guilty about her death. That's my worst crime. I mean, what's the point of any of that if you can't protect your family?
Yeah, of course.
So I really didn't give a shit what happened to the trial for a long time.
David's wife, Clelia, died in a mysterious fire in Fairley Women's Prison in Melbourne. Only 3 people died in the fire, 2 of which were connected to his trial. In David's eyes, it was not an accident. With the loss of his wife, David was a broken man, and he began to lash out.
I was only interested in kind of really vengeance at the time. My visits with my lawyer were brief. I would hand him a list of contacts to get money and another list of people to be killed. Luckily, he was an understanding lawyer and kind of settled me down.
The trial had slipped through David's fingers. He was eventually sentenced to 17 years in Australia's infamous Pentridge jail. As a cruel joke, on his arrival he was given old police surveillance recordings of his dead wife, a voice from the grave.
I'm given a tape recorder and I can hear my wife moving from room to room in the house. And on one of them, her sister ringing, and she must have been sounding upset. Her sister said, "Have you been crying?" She said, "Oh, no, not really." Well, I said, "David?" No, it's nothing. And they went on to talk about something else. But you think then your entire life is gone, and you've got these mysteries of people that you're close to. Many people would have felt so crushed they would have got out of anything to do with the drug business. But in fact, it was a declaration of war for me.
Faced with years behind bars, David now saw smuggling as a way of getting back at the authorities for the death of his wife, a battle he waged for a further 10 years.
There were some inner demons that weren't exorcised quite. I still felt at home in that world, like some old soldier who only knows the combat fields. And I just couldn't surrender to peacetime. I knew it all so well that I just couldn't walk away from it.
You didn't know anything else as well? I mean?
Not really, and there was nobody in my life that was important enough to do it for.
I've got to say, Dave, you've got some stories, mate. You've got some amazing stories, you know.
Well, thanks for saying so, but what goes with that is what a waste.
Well, no, I'll raise my glass to you.
All right.
Cheers, Dave.
Good to know.
Thank you. I think I've underestimated him a little bit. You know, it's the first guy I've done who I could probably, well, I know if I had a tear up with him, to make sure he can't hear, I could probably knock him out. But there's definitely an element to this fella that is clearly dangerous. Somebody that's done bird in the places that he's done. You've got to have something about you, and he's had to survive, and he survived, and he's here to tell me about it. So here I am on the high seas. It's not as choppy as it was. Cameraman and a smuggler, and I'm looking forward to my night's sleep. Let me fucking tell you that.
It's morning, and last night's conversations have really shaken me. David comes across as a gentleman, but the truth is that he deals in a deadly business, and there are many victims. I've survived the night, but I really cannot wait to get off this boat. Coming up, I hear more about the hazards of smuggling in Asia.
Getting battered with these huge sticks, it is incredibly painful.
And I have a crazy stay with David's family.
Are you really a drug dealer?
No, of course I ain't.
I've just got back from a scary sailing trip with ex-international drug smuggler David Mcmillan.
Well, there have been times when people have disappeared.
Out of his 30-year career, he's spent 19 behind bars. His last stay in prison was just 6 years ago, where he served 2 years for smuggling half a kilo of coke through Heathrow. But he now claims to be retired and living the quiet life. He's told me about the death of his first wife, and in the car he explains how he met his current girlfriend, Jeanette. She now has him on the straight and narrow, and being David, there's a story attached to it. 2 years after his dramatic escape from the Bangkok Hilton, he was in trouble again after one of his drug mules betrayed him. He ended up awaiting trial in Pakistan on drug smuggling charges.
I found myself walking past a dungeon with a great hook hanging from the middle of the ceiling and led into a room with a car battery over in the corner with terminals all over the place. That wasn't good. No, it wasn't good at all.
I think that may be the understatement of the century. But David managed to pull a few strings and was eventually released.
I got myself out of there, got a not guilty acquittal, cheers all around. The judge was very happy, managed to get his house extended.
But he didn't leave Pakistan empty-handed. One of David's friends inside Karachi Central Prison had a wife, Jeanette. She would come to the prison for visits, and it was during those visits David and Jeanette began to fall in love.
Kind of totally out of my character, really, but marriage was on the rocks anyway. I just met David and I knew he was the one.
David's been a tough nut to crack. After that boat trip, I think I've really made some progress. He's invited me to stay the night and have some dinner with the family.
Bit of respect. Leaning all over his door. What's the matter with me? I was brought up with manners.
Come on, at the door. Ah, it's that little friend. Just a minute.
Wow.
Wow, wow.
Whoa, I thought you might be.
How are you, young man?
Welcome,
You
welcome.
okay?
And this is...
Hello, sweetheart.
Hello, darling, pleased to meet you.
Lovely to
friend
meet you,
of mine,
darling.
Danny.
Pleasure to meet you. Oh, you got some lovely little dogs. Come on in, dog. Come
I
on.
think he'll come back.
This place is immaculate. Very different to what I imagined. But as it turns out, this isn't David's place at all. It's Jeanette's. They both seem a bit nervous, and I have to keep the conversation going.
They're worth a few quid, these dogs, aren't they?
What, the Pomeranian?
Yeah, about £1,000.
Yeah, they are. They're about a bag of, they are, honestly.
A bag of.
A bag of sand.
Bag of sand.
Oh, you'll have to tell me all of those, Daniel.
No.
My darling doesn't know the lingo.
Well, no, I thought, you know, you're at Bermondsey, don't you?
Yeah, I'm Bermondsey.
So you know the game then, didn't you?
David's a bit posh, and Jeanette's from around my neck of the woods. But looking around the place, it's easy to spot what they have in common. Jeanette's 2 daughters.
Have you ever thought about having children of your own? Is this just something that obviously, you know, I know you spent a lot of time in prison, but it just never happened for you? Or?
Well, I made sure I didn't have children in the very early part of my crooked career. I didn't want... it was too much responsibility. I wasn't going to inflict that damage on them, so I made sure I didn't have them. But really, I feel like I do have them now. And of course, you know, I'd like to be a father. I understand you've got a young girl.
I've got 2 daughters, yeah.
Really?
2 daughters.
Do you think you do things in a less risky way now that you've got kids of your own?
Yeah, you basically, it's that moment of you don't just think about yourself anymore, you have to think about others first.
Well, exactly, and I'm not about to betray Jeanette and the girls by getting myself arrested. You know. I've run out of time, Danny, that's the thing. 50. What have I got? 20 good years left? I'm not going to walk out on all of this.
Now that he's in his 50s, I can understand why David doesn't want to go back to jail. But I wonder whether this world of drugs is all that he knows. While David cooks up some steaks for dinner, I corner his daughter to find out what it's like having a drug smuggler for a dad.
How much do you sort of know about Dave and the sort of life that he's lived? Does he keep that quite close to his chest?
He told me about it, all of it.
Do you think there's a different side to David that you ain't seen?
No.
No? You know everything you need to know?
Yeah.
And you trust him?
Yeah, I trust him a lot. I know he's a good man, and I've been my father since I was like 7.
Really?
I really love him, he's great.
This is no normal household that Ellie's grown up in, and it shocks me to hear that David has been so open about his past. Then again, Ellie's biological father, who David knew in prison in Pakistan, was done for smuggling 2 tons of hash. With this colourful family background, we should have an interesting dinner conversation.
What do you sort of do to relax then?
I don't know whether it's ever... Just play cards.
A bit of Charlie, you got a shake You got a Hoover nose?
Yeah, she does.
You've got your work cut out with these 2, ain't you?
I've got nothing.
I don't know many 17-year-olds that joke about using coke in front of their parents. But when I asked Jeanette about the reality of David's career, things get a bit serious.
Lovely, this lovely bit of dinner. Appreciate this, mate. Just want to ask you, how do you feel about his job?
Well, he's retired now.
Yep.
So
First of all, right, okay.
I'm really happy. I'm kind of relaxed. Before, it was a nightmare. Every time he walked out the door, it's like, is he coming back? Where is he? You know.
It must be horrendous, to be fair.
Oh, it's a hard life to live with somebody like David. Sorry to say.
If it wasn't for Jeanette, I'd still be in a jail somewhere. That's true. Absolutely true.
Yeah, really? What makes you say that?
I've settled him down.
And no one's got a heart like this woman.
Oh my God.
It is better than a diamond.
Lovely. Well, you got to get a ring on her finger, didn't you? You got to do it lively and all. I can imagine a ring that Jeanette wanted and all. So it'll cost you about 50 grand.
Ma, there's a potato bit.
I think I have to get my old suitcase down from the top shelf, you know? The one with 3 sides to it.
As the evening carries on, a few strange questions start flying my way.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
Are you really a drug dealer?
Am I really a drug dealer?
Yeah, someone told me that you're a drug
In
dealer.
real life? In real life? No. Of course I ain't. I'd be mad, wouldn't I? Bit on top, innit, me selling drugs?
With the conversation going downhill, and having had my fill of wine, stories of drug deals and prisons, I decide to hit the sack. It's the next morning, and Jeanette's booted us out of the house, so David and I go and get a fry-up. David's lived an amazing life, one that few could have survived. He's now found a new one with the love of a good woman, and it seems to suit him well. David's biggest gamble is to go on the straight and narrow. I feel confident that he won't go back to the smuggling game now that he has so much to lose.